William Anders is a lot of things. An astronaut, a pilot, a father, a husband, a businessman, even an ambassador to Sweden. Anders had a huge impact on the 20th century. He was born in 1933 in Hong Kong while his father was stationed there for the Navy. Some of his earliest memories of aviation was watching the Japanese bomb China near where he was staying during the Second Sino-Japanese War. This left an impression on him. To gain acceptance into the Naval Academy, he would attend a military prep school. He would be accepted to the Naval Academy and would transfer into the Air Force as a second lieutenant in 1955. Anders would become a fighter pilot, manning a Northrop F-89 Scorpion. Those planes had nuclear capabilities. Being an F-89 fighter pilot, Anders spent time in Iceland, which was a key location during the Cold War. There, he would continually encounter Soviet fighters, and each side would try to push each other's buttons. After gaining valuable experience as a fighter pilot, Anders wanted to become a test pilot. With the advice of Chuck Yeager, he would gain an advanced degree in order to become a test pilot. Although he tried to get a graduate degree in aviation, the Air Force had no spots left. He would end up in the nuclear engineering department. Anders didn't know it at the time, but this would land him on a path to the moon. Anders would apply for astronaut selection without the needed endorsement of Yeager. Yeager thought only test pilots should be considered for the program and have his recommendation. When Anders applied, he had a unique degree, and as it turns out, he pissed off Yeager for not applying through the proper channels. Anders had no idea, but Yeager was disliked by Chief of Flight Crew Operations, Deke Slayton. So when Yeager tried to get Anders off the list, Slayton became an Anders fan. But that degree in nuclear engineering was needed on the astronaut team, since many had concerns about radiation of the Van Allen belt. But by the time the flight would come around, those concerns would shrink due to further research. He would be selected as part of Astronaut Group 3. Anders wouldn't receive a flight right away. Instead, he was heavily involved in dosimetry radiation effects and environmental controls while awaiting a flight. Anders would get his chance. He was assigned as lunar module pilot for Apollo 8, despite there not being a lunar module ready to fly. Apollo launched December 21, 1968.
9. We have ignition sequence start. The engines are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Looks good.
Cleared the tower.
Oh, and there's the rumble in our building. It looks good. It looks like a good flight. It's a beautiful takeoff so far. This building is shaking under us. Our camera platform is shaking. But what a beautiful flight. Man, perhaps on the way to the moon, if all continues to go well. Probably more severe than the men in the spacecraft itself.
The mission was a bold step for NASA. The flight was the first to fly on top of the legendary Saturn V and the first to have men leave Earth orbit. Simply put, it was a risk to NASA and the astronauts' lives. It's important to understand the context of the Apollo 8 flight. 1968 was a terrible year for Americans. As the Vietnam War raged on, Americans were horrified at the incredible pain the Tet Offensive caused. The Vietnam War was a disaster. On the home front, both Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. And as the year went on, student protests around the nation, as well as the Chicago riots at the Democratic National Convention, would overwhelm the American psyche. The country needed something to feel good about. It would be Apollo 8 that saved 1968. Had the flight failed, or would they be unable to return to Earth, they would likely still be orbiting the moon. The flight was scheduled to arrive on the moon on Christmas Eve. Had something bad happened, that could have ruined Christmas forever. It was a huge risk. Anders thought it was a 1 in 3 chance the mission would be scrapped mid-flight. 1 in 3 chance of death and 1 in 3 chance of astronauts never making it back. The mission was a success, and Anders took this photo of Earth. It's one of the most iconic images of the 20th century. Many credit this photo with starting the modern environmentalism movement. The picture shows how alone, small, and isolated we are in the blackness of space. But anybody tuning in to listen to the Apollo 8 broadcast would hear just the right thing at the right time. The three astronauts knew exactly what to say. No matter what you believe, no matter what you feel, when William Anders began to speak on Christmas Eve 1968, it was the best Christmas present ever.
And for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness.